What's up, people? Hi there, this is Mr. Gonzalez. Just going to do a little tutoring on our for our test on Monday. Let me go back a page here. So hopefully you read the chapters and you look through your notes, and this is going to be kind of quick so you can kind of see what you're missing or what you need help with. So this is the organic molecule part of the tutoring. So let's start with what organic molecules are. Before this lesson, we talked a lot about elements, and in particular, we ended up our story with covalent bonds. And that was carbon being super awesome at doing this, sharing in 4 different directions. Carbon likes to share. It's so nice. And basically, it can make these long chains because it can share with other carbons. And so these molecules end up having like a nice backbone. And you can make things like sugars and fats, and they can store a lot of energy. So that's where our conversation sort of went from chemistry to organic chemistry. And then we said, hey, there's 4 types of organic molecules we're going to talk about. So the first one we started with just carbs. Just remember, carbs are your sugars and your starches. Okay. Lipids are your fats, oils, and waxes. Okay. Proteins have many, many functions, but if you see anything that says amino acid, it's a protein. If you see anything where shape is important, the shape of the molecule is important, that's probably a protein. Enzymes are proteins. Bone, muscle, teeth, eyeballs, all made up of proteins. So proteins have a lot of functions. Antibodies or other ones. And then nucleic acid is your DNA and your RNA. So let's dive deeper into these 4, okay? So let's start with the carbs. So basically your carbohydrates are a source of energy. We said that they're great at very fast burning, quick energy, especially this guy, the monosaccharides. Mono means one, saccharide means sugar. So popular monosaccharides is this guy right here. Now remember, I said you don't have to be able to draw this thing over again, but you do have to be able to recognize it. So the first thing you want to check to make sure that you have glucose is that it's a hexagon like this, okay? And the second thing you want to check to make sure that it's the glucose molecule is check this guy right here. That's going to be where the oxygen is. Remember, we built models of these, and the whole chain was carbon except for that one red one. So just double check that there's an oxygen there. So it'll say O. And then to the left of that O, you're going to see a tower. And so on this tower, you're going to see either like all this stuff written out like this, O, H. It's just a bunch of stuff, or you're going to see something that's big. Remember from our review sheet, there was one, the carbon there only had an H. That means it wasn't glucose. Okay, so be able to recognize what glucose looks like. You'll either see it like that with all the elements, or you'll see any single hexagon just like that represents glucose. So glucose is used in cellular respiration. And we said cellular respiration is what our cells do. Oops. Cellular respiration is what our cells perform. The function, it's a process our cells perform for energy. Cells use glucose to make energy. You can't make energy, but they make this molecule called ATP, which we'll talk about later. But cells use glucose to make energy. All right, so it gives your body energy. So those are monosaccharides. Glucose is one, fructose is another. Fast burning. Now disaccharides, we said, is like sucrose. There you'll see 2 hexagons that are attached to one another like this. Okay, those are disaccharides. These also need to be digested too. So this bond here, this thing that's holding them together, needs to be broken. And sucrose, if I say this is sucrose, sucrose is made up of glucose and fructose together. So it's made up of 2 monosaccharides. Okay. Lactose is another one that's a disaccharide. That's what the other one that we said, which is the sugar in milk. Poly means a lot. So a polysaccharide is a lot of sugar. So what you want to do is, or what you'll see on the test is, you're going to have these hexagons like this. And it's like crazy. Like I would need to draw forever, and I'm not gonna. But just very long chains are polysaccharides. And we talked about a couple, so here they are. The most famous one is starch, and starch has a fancy name, amylose. Okay. Other polysaccharides we talked about. We talked about who did we talk about? Oh, glycogen. And glycogen is a polysaccharide, a very long sugar made up of glucoses, and it's stored in the liver. Okay, so glycogen is a polysaccharide. Chitin. Chitin is the polysaccharide that makes up arthropod shells. So crabs, roaches, arthropod shells. And cellulose. Cellulose, most abundant organic molecule. Plants make it in their cell wall. It's in paper and anything that's wood. And the main thing is we can't digest it. So cellulose passes right through your body. So we talked a little bit about how you can eat fiber. Fiber is what makes, it's just undigested plant material that goes through you. But it's healthy for your intestine, fiber. Okay. Then we talked a little bit about the sugars that float around our blood. They have to be controlled somehow. If you can't control your blood sugar, then you probably have diabetes, which is something we talked about. So let's start here. We said if you have high blood sugar, that will stimulate your pancreas, this is your pancreas, to make insulin. So we're going this way now. To make insulin. This is also in your notebook so you can follow along. High blood sugar makes your pancreas make insulin. Okay, oops, I went the wrong way. Sorry about that. Stay with the red arrows. So your pancreas will make insulin. Now, what's cool is insulin does two things. The first thing it does is it tells your cells to take in sugar. Okay, so your cells will take in glucose, and that will lower your blood sugar. Now, if you have a lot of glucose, some of it gets converted from glucose to glycogen. Glycogen is the polysaccharide that's, remember, stored in your liver, and it's kind of like reserves of sugar. Once you store that, that also lowers blood sugar. Cool. And so that's the story for insulin, low blood sugar. Now, if you have low blood sugar and you haven't eaten in a while, that will stimulate your pancreas again, but your pancreas now makes glucagon. Glucagon is sort of like the opposite of insulin. It's the hormone, and what's annoying is its name is like glycogen. Glucagon, glycogen, glycogen, glucagon. So just have to remember the pancreas makes glucagon, okay, causes your glycogen to now break down. So glucagon's job is to break up this polysaccharide back to monosaccharide, and then this gets released into your blood, and it's kind of like eating again. It raises your blood sugar. And then you have high blood sugar, and that causes insulin to come out, and then that lowers blood sugar. Then you have, like, it's crazy. This is called the dynamic system. It just keeps like going back and forth to keep you in nice homeostasis, balance. So that's how we regulate blood sugar. Lipids! So lipids are your fats, your oils, and your waxes. We said their importance or their use. One of the main things is importance is they're hydrophobic. They're so afraid of water, man. This makes things waterproof. So we said stuff like leaves. Leaves don't want to absorb water. So, oh, look, I have a leaf. They don't want to absorb water. So they are coated in lipids. Same thing with like apple skin is very waxy. We said the feathers of many birds. Look, it says hydro water. Oh my gosh. See, I can't write and talk at the same time. Hydrophobic. Cool. So what kind of fats are there? Oh, other jobs. It works as an insulator. So blubber in animals. So we said, remember, whales, their blubber is like very, very thick. So our triglycerides, these are the kinds of fats that we will encounter. The first one we talked about, the reason we talked about it is because it's in our food. It's also related to our health. So we threw it in there. What you usually see is some kind of head with 3 tails. That's why it's called a triglyceride. The head is a glycerol molecule, glycerol, and the tails are 3 hydrocarbon fatty acid tails. They're called fatty acid tails. Now, if I were to zoom in on here, I said these are hydrocarbons. That means it's that chain I was telling you about. Like that. Crazy long. And it's called a hydrocarbon because every carbon has hydrogen on it, like that, and so on and so forth. So this is a triglyceride. We said they kind of come in 2 shapes. If these hydrocarbons are straight and all these guys hang out next to each other, you get a solid. You get bacon grease. You get unhealthy. So this fat is solid at room temperature usually, and we call this saturated fat. Saturated fat. Solid at room temperature. Saturated. Cool. If it's unsaturated, it means that the little hydrocarbon tails are bent a little bit. What happens is these molecules actually are more spread out from one another because of these bends. That spreads out the molecules, so these guys are liquid at room temperature, and these guys are unsaturated fat. Saturated. Okay, so unsaturated fat, molecule bent, so now we know that. Groovy. Phospholipids. Here you'll see a head with 2 tails. The head is a phosphate group, and these guys are 2 little hydrocarbon lipid tails. Okay, so you'll see 2 tails. These make up the cell membrane, and they are, when you see them, they all hang out next to each other like this. And these also long things. And then you'll see the other guys are upside down, kind of like this, which is awesome. And this makes up the double layer. This would be in the cell, and this would be out of the cell, like that. So that's them. And then cholesterol, it's got a bunch of functions, but one of the main ones it does is its function is to keep the membrane sort of fluid. It helps out the membrane. Fluidity, we said. Fluidity. So cholesterol sort of hangs out in between your cell membrane and kind of makes the cell be able to sort of move. We mainly talked about it too because high cholesterol can sort of be dangerous because we said that in your artery wall you can start to build up plaque, deposits of fat, and this could completely get blocked and eventually cause a heart attack. So that's one thing we mentioned. So that's your lipids. Your proteins. Okay, so proteins are made up of amino acids. We said there's 20 amino acids in the world. One way you'll recognize all of them is if they all have nitrogen. So you'll see anything with N in it will totally be an amino acid. The other thing we said is if you just get a long chain of amino acids hooked up, amino acid, amino acid, amino acid, etc., this is called a polypeptide. Polypeptide. Polypeptide is a long chain of amino acids. Now it's not a protein yet because it's kind of like a train and you kind of have to bend it and shape it and move it. So if you ever see the ribbon, I know some of you said, hey, in my notebook I got all these scribbles. I don't know what they are. If you see the ribbon that we kind of had on the slide in class, this is what a protein is. Okay, so the protein is actually shape specific. So its shape is important because if you change the shape, you change the function. It won't work. So if we actually pull this and look at it right here, you'll see all the amino acids lined up. Okay, so know that we need to make a protein, it's got to be like all coiled up. When it's straight, it's called a polypeptide. We have 20 amino acids, and you can recognize an amino acid by seeing the letter N, nitrogen. All right, so we got that, polypeptide. These bonds right here, the bonds between these amino acids are called peptide bonds. And peptide bonds are formed by dehydration synthesis. Okay, so formed by, we could say, formed by. And this is basically if you had an amino acid, in the corner of one amino acid, there's an OH. And in the corner of, actually, the side corner, every amino acid has an H. And every amino acid has an OH on this side. They all have that. So what happens is if to bond two amino acids, you actually can make water. You pop off this water, make this H2O, which gets rid of this. Let me grab my eraser here. We're going to get rid of that OHHH. And now what's cool is the amino acid could totally bond up. Just hook them up, and this water's made. To make one bond, you get one water. And the same thing happens. You basically line up your amino acids until they all perform that dehydration synthesis. And that's how we make a polypeptide chain. Is it a protein yet? It's not. You need it to coil, remember, to be a protein. Cool? Then we said proteins had a lot of functions. So the roles, the first one was build up your body. So we have proteins in our eyes. That's crystalline. You'll see that in your notes. Your teeth are made up of enamel. Your muscle is made up of protein. What else? What else? Keratin, which is your skin. So keratin is the protein. And then hemoglobin, which is the one in your blood. Hemoglobin is a protein in your blood. And this carries oxygen. That's its job. Cool. So they build up your body. The second thing is enzymes, which are little proteins that help speed up reactions and do things in your body. If you see one on the test, you'll see the famous lock and key model, which is this is the enzyme. And the thing it's trying to break is called a substrate. And the substrate is made up of two things. And basically it just fits in like a puzzle. So the enzyme will sort of pop that bond off because we need to break this bond, and then the enzyme makes two things really fast, really, really fast. If you didn't have enzymes, it would slow things down. Problem with enzymes, if you mess with them, they're shape specific. So if you heat them up or something happens, all this shape could totally be messed up like that, and the enzyme won't work anymore, and then you're sick. Sorry. What's the third thing? Oh, fight diseases. Fight diseases, and that is antibodies. Antibodies are proteins. Don't need to know the specific of how antibodies work or any of that yet. So just know that antibodies are an example of proteins. And there's one more that I can't think of. Fight diseases, enzyme, build up your body, and what's the other one? Proteins. Let's see. It's Halloween now. Where's my proteins? Proteins, refresher, and transport proteins. I totally forgot them. Okay, so transport proteins are proteins that transport. So you have your cell membrane, and you basically have like a big bean in there, and that that little protein that's inside your cell membrane helps transport things right through the membrane. Okay, it's pretty much proteins in a nutshell. And the last organic molecule is the nucleic acids. These are nucleic acids. That's what the Na is there. And pretty much it's like this. So DNA's job is the genetic code. This is what DNA looks like, by the way. You have to be able to see what it looks like. Boom, 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 boom. Don't worry about what RNA looks like yet. But DNA is the genetic code. And we said it's kind of like a recipe book. And RNA's job is kind of like it's like the chef or grandma making spaghetti. RNA produces or helps produce the amino acids. Sorry, just put proteins. Puts together the amino acids to make proteins. So that's the main difference. DNA is the code, the instructions, the blueprint, and RNA is the chef that completely puts together all those amino acids. And that's pretty much the 4 organic molecules in a nutshell. Okay, guys, good luck. Bye.